On a recent video I made about all of the Modern Warfare related dreams I've had, someone left this comment about their own dream. Of course, what they're referring to is the mission Aftermath, which takes place after the nuke goes off in Call of Duty 4. Their comment actually reminded me of a story I have, involving both the Shock and Awe and Aftermath missions from the game. Not about a dream, but about a custom mod that I truly believed I was capable of making as a kid. Not only that, but I believed it would be successful in the modding community. Let me start from the beginning. It was around 2017, and my favorite videos to watch on YouTube were videos of custom COD campaigns. And yes, if you didn't know, Call of Duty actually has a pretty cool modding community. Anyway, being a kid and watching these videos, my mind was racing with custom campaigns I had come up with myself. Now around the same time, I was also equally interested in the alpha and pre-alpha builds of the Modern Warfare games. There's a lot to be found in these old builds, but usually it's just incomplete versions of existing missions. There was one exception, however, that I absolutely loved at the time. So, believe it or not, in the pre-alpha of Call of Duty 4, there were helicopter flying mechanics, and a cut mission that uses them. Now, footage of this is constantly re-uploaded and taken down, maybe even by Activision or Infinity Ward, and because of that, I won't be showing it here. If you're interested though, just look up this. Call of Duty 4 Pre-Alpha Cobra Pilot. Anyway, I thought to myself, if flying mechanics exist in a very early build of Call of Duty 4, then why not put them in the final game? So I came up with an idea. If you remember the pilot from the mission Shock and Awe, the one assisting you throughout the mission and the one you save after a crash, my idea was fairly simple. You play as that pilot during much of the mission, but during the sections where she says lines about needing to refuel, you would switch back to your normal character, Sergeant Jackson. Now, I'll explain in more detail how the mission was meant to go in a second, but there is a bit more context I need to give first. A question that might already be on someone's mind is, well, how far did you get into making this? And the answer is, not very. I wrote a detailed script for the mission, and then researched a little bit on how to make custom maps for Call of Duty 4, but that's all really. I assume life just got in the way and I forgot about it. That being said, for the purpose of this video, I looked all over the place for the specific journal I wrote the script in, but to no avail. It would have been cool to show, but in all honesty, I still remember writing most of it, so I'm just going to go through the mission now. From the very start, the mission would be different, as the pilot immediately says that her helicopter will take out the big targets, while Jackson's helicopter will target the smaller ones. In the actual mission, you use the Mark 19 to mainly take out enemies firing from rooftops, as well as a few tanks. In my idea, the objectives would be similar, but not exactly the same. Besides the fact that you actually have to control the helicopter, the targets would consist of tanks, other helicopters, and at least attempting to blow up entire buildings. Once the first section of the mission is done, and your objective shifts to saving soldiers pinned down in a building, the pilot says this.
Hello, this is Deadly. Returning to base to refit and refuel. You're on your own for now, Q5.
At this point, the perspective would switch to Sergeant Jackson, as he and the rest of the team are approaching the landing zone. It'd play out normal for a little while. You'd clear the path, enter the building, and climb the stairs to reach your teammates. When completing this objective, the pilot says yet another line of dialogue, confirming that she will assist you yet again, which leads to another change in perspective. For this one in specific, I had an idea for how the transition would go. It would essentially be the opposite of the way some missions start in this game, where the camera zooms in from the sky and into the perspective of your character. In this case, the camera would zoom out from Jackson's perspective, and you would control the pilot for the second time. This section doesn't take too long, of course. So from the helicopter, you fire a machine gun and perhaps a couple of missiles to clear out the enemies standing between the main squad and the helicopter. Now we're going to get to the interesting part, the iconic helicopter crash and rescue effort. At this point, you would still be in control of the pilot, and we know COD is known for their helicopter crashes. So rather than just witnessing the crash, you're directly involved. The helicopter spins out the way that we see in the mission, going between the buildings and eventually crashing, which leads to a short black loading screen. The game fades back in a way that's almost as iconic in the series as the helicopter crash itself. Blurred vision before reaching to pull out a pistol as enemies are approaching fast. You hear through your radio about the rescue attempt about to take place, as the helicopter is circling around you, and you also hear from command that if the nuke goes off, no one will be at a safe distance. After the first wave of enemies is clear, you're able to respond to the radio, asking for help. There's of course a bit more time where you have to defend before the soldiers reach you, and Sergeant Jackson carries you back to the helicopter. At this point, the final part of the mission is very similar, just at a slightly different angle, as the Cobra pilot was put in a seat slightly further back. Once the nuke goes off and the helicopter starts spinning out, you still see Lieutenant Volker fall, and you can see Sergeant Jackson holding on. After the crash happens, the Aftermath mission begins as normal because, while in the remastered version of the game, you can still see your allies thrashing around. In the original, Jackson is already the only survivor. After the screen fades to white, instead of the mission ending, there's a loading screen to an added section of the mission. But before I get into that, I want to add in a quick break here to explain some things. First of all, thinking about all of this again, I can't help but wonder how doable this idea really was. I mean, this whole thing started because there were flying mechanics in an early build of COD 4, and because of that, I thought it would be easy for them to exist in the final game. But I get the feeling now that that isn't the case. Anyway, I have another story in regards to the added sections of Aftermath. There's been quite a few times where I see on forums that Sergeant Jackson wasn't actually supposed to die in this mission. There was meant to be an entirely different outcome, where you look for a radiation suit. There's consensus that this was the plan during early stages of development, as the objectives were located in the game files, but this wasn't actually what I wanted to make. I had a different idea entirely, and it goes like this. After the next section is loaded, there's one of those black screens with green text, explaining that the time had jumped forward. I don't remember the exact amount of time, but it was probably somewhere from a day to a week. When the game fades back in, you see that you're part of a rescue team inside of a vehicle that resembles a small APC. All of you are wearing suits to protect yourselves from the radiation, and you're slowly traveling through the wasteland that was once a city. You're looking for anything of note, civilians who tried to avoid the blast, enemies who still might be around, and the bodies of soldiers. That way you can both confirm their deaths and recover them. Eventually, you reach a part of the road that's covered in rubble, so the vehicle can't pass. You and two other soldiers exit and continue on foot while the vehicle stays there. There's a sequence where you carefully make your way through the blocked area, as a wrong move could damage your suit. You and your fellow soldiers walk through a few streets, and the intention is for the player to look around and see the destruction, as your allies comment on it. While crossing into another street, you hear a faint knocking sound, which is coming from the outside doors of a basement. You're assigned a new objective to investigate the noise, and you find a civilian who took refuge from the blast in the building. One of your allies opts to escort him back to the APC, while you and the other soldier press on. Now, I hate to disappoint, but I don't think I had ever completed the writing for this mission, so there's a gap here. But there was one interesting idea that I did come up with later in the mission. At some point, you reach the crash site seen in the Aftermath mission, and you investigate the bodies to confirm each death and what unit they were a part of, but something weird happens. You're able to find everybody, except for Volker's and Jackson's bodies. Now, as we know, Volker falls out of the helicopter during the crash, while Jackson seemingly succumbs to either radiation or injuries from said crash. Now, while as the player we have this context, the soldiers we're playing as don't, so they come to the conclusion that everyone is KIA except for Jackson and Volker, whose deaths aren't confirmed. We're meant to be left wondering why they weren't able to find Jackson, and there's meant to be this sense of mystery. Maybe he was able to find shelter after all, but it would never be confirmed. Anyway, finding the crash site was meant to be the final section of the mission before it ends, so I guess that concludes my story of the alternative Shock and Awe Aftermath missions. Okay, so I like to put outros at the end of my videos despite the fact that they affect my watch time negatively, but I'll be very fast this time. As stated in my community posts, I was busy with getting my driver's license and then moving back into my dorm for the next semester of college. But I appreciate the support as always, and I'll come up with a new video soon. Hope you enjoy it.